Hey, look at that rail in the middle. What happens if I touch it?
Total blackout.
I'm just gonna...
Don't do it!
But it's so...
Get a load of this, boat.
Just a little tap.
What in the world is wrong with you?
HBR Talk with Hannah Wallen. Bill Cosby has been released from prison after his conviction was overturned by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Immediately, the narratives began to fly, running the gamut between citation of the ruling as complete vindication and adamant reminders to everyone that the case was overturned on a technicality that didn't prove Cosby innocent. There has been a lot of discussion analyzing the case. Commentators have pointed out the biases of the judge and prosecutors involved, the tainted jury, and the fact that said technicality was in no way minor. Cosby's constitutional due process protections, including protection against being compelled to incriminate himself, were violated. How? For that, we have to return to the initial allegation and the original prosecutor who had declined to prosecute him. As explained in the court's decision, several considerations led DA Castor to conclude that unless Cosby confessed, there was insufficient credible and admissible evidence upon which any charge against Mr. Cosby related to the Constand incident could be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. These complications included inconsistencies in Constand's police interviews and her behavior after the alleged incident that undermined her credibility in Castor's eyes. The document continued, seeking some measure of justice for Constand, DA Castor decided that the Commonwealth would decline to prosecute Cosby for the incident involving Constand, thereby allowing Cosby to be forced to testify in a subsequent civil action under penalty of perjury without the benefit of his Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination. Castor even admitted in his own later testimony that compelling Cosby to testify in this manner was his intent. He knew he had a weak case, but he could bolster Constand's civil case by eliminating Cosby's Fifth Amendment protection. Because of this decision, Bill Cosby made several statements under oath that he would not otherwise have given. He admitted to a sexual relationship with Constand and to having shared Benadryl with her, but not to giving her any drugs surreptitiously or sharing any other type of drug with her. He admitted to providing quaaludes to other women with whom he wanted to have sex, but he did not admit to drugging women without their knowledge or using drugs to incapacitate anyone. These statements were no smoking gun, but they did open the door for arguments that might have met the lower burden of proof in Constand's civil case, and Cosby ended up agreeing to a financial settlement with her. Castor's replacement, Kevin Steele, had campaigned on the promise to prosecute Cosby, and after he was elected, he did exactly that. Using the evidence obtained by depriving him of his Fifth Amendment protection, admitted into the case by a judge who cited Cosby's history of moralizing rather than any legal exception to the Constitution as his reason. Additionally, a tape of a telephone conversation that DA Castor had presumed inadmissible in his original assessment of the case was also admitted as evidence. That tape was later found by a forensic lab to be doctored. As the Philadelphia Tribune reported in September of 2018, a source whom can only be identified as a neutral Montgomery County court official claims a tape played in court that helped convict Bill Cosby was either doctored or partly erased, and the original recording contained information that would exonerate the comedian. The Tribune also reported that Robert Russell, a former friend of the Constand family, was prepared to testify that Andrea Constand, at her mother's direction, plotted to extort Cosby, but his testimony was not allowed by Judge Stephen T. O'Neill. In addition to allowing all of that questionable evidence, the court allowed 5 accusers whose allegations had not been subject to any forensic investigation and who were not part of Constand's criminal complaint to testify at Cosby's 2-day sentencing in regard to their allegations against Cosby in support of hers. Under what system of law is a convict sentenced not just for a crime he was convicted of, but on the basis of a slew of other allegations that were never investigated nor subject to trial? After the original mistrial, one juror came forward on the condition of anonymity to explain why he did not believe Cosby's accuser. From Insider, "No stained garment, no smoking gun, nothing," he said, adding that you could draw little evidence from decades ago. He further added that the accusations of 60 women who have since come forward with similar accusations played no role in his deliberations. He thought many of them had made up their claims to get attention. The article ended by quoting him as stating that officials should have left the case closed. Cosby's conviction was not based on forensic evidence of sexual assault, nor on any confession to any action that would constitute a sexual assault. Rather, it was based on selective attention to and interpretation of evidence that was almost entirely either circumstantial or suggestive. Most of what was relied upon for the final verdict was entered into evidence in violation of Cosby's right to Fifth Amendment protections. The case wasn't just overturned on a technicality, it relied on that technical abuse. Correcting the procedural error left the state with nothing but unverified allegations, most of which contributed not to the conviction, but to the sentencing. But what about those allegations? Many who are insisting that Cosby is guilty as sin and the men's rights movement should distance ourselves from the case for that reason are relying on two factors to make that statement. There were a lot of allegations, 60 total, and they all sounded similar to each other. The problem is, the overwhelming majority of those allegations were made after the first accuser's story in all of its ugly detail made the news. The allegations don't corroborate each other, they copy each other, like a bunch of high school co-eds turning in the same short story in a feminist writing class. That isn't proof that they are all false, but there is nothing about the number or similarity of the allegations that makes them more credible than any individual, equally unverified allegation. 60 allegations which individually are not credible do not suddenly become so when viewed en masse, even if they are identical, unless the accusers had no original template on which to base their stories. And while it is technically correct that the lack of valid evidence against him does not prove Cosby innocent, that isn't what matters about this case. Neither is some commenters' equally, or maybe more invalid, presumption of his guilt. What's important is the consequences of failure to uphold strict standards for due process. There are consequences, regardless of whether he's guilty or innocent. If he's innocent, the primary consequence is that an innocent man was put through a horrible ordeal, wrongly imprisoned, his reputation devastated, and his public robbed of a highly valued mentor, all because his right to the presumption of innocence and his Fifth Amendment protection against self-incrimination were violated. If he's guilty, the primary consequence is that those same due process violations gave him a means to have his conviction overturned, and following the court's decision, he can't be tried again. The validity of the case against him will always be in doubt, and community trust in the system has been damaged. We don't know for certain which of these two circumstances is the truth. Everyone's assessment of the evidence, no matter how dearly held their opinion may be, is still just opinion. The only thing that is undeniably true is that Cosby has neither been proven guilty nor proven innocent, and because of the current situation, we will probably never know which he is. Instead, we now know that every man has been splattered with the fallout from that case. Regardless of whether the corrupt justice system tortured an innocent man with 3 years of malicious prosecution and 3 years of false imprisonment, or let a serial rapist out of prison, that case made it normal to call unverified allegations credible. Your reputation can be destroyed, and your freedom potentially taken away for years without so much as a shred of forensic evidence. All your accuser has to do is inspire some copycats. However you feel about Cosby's case, that knowledge should scare the hell out of you. This week, HBR Talk will discuss some of the details of Bill Cosby's case and its implications for due process advocates. The discussion streams on multiple platforms. You can tune into the YouTube live stream or find other viewing and listening options for that time or later on HoneyBadgerBrigade.com.